a subscription can survive for one stupid reason: your old payment card still works. Not because you love the service. Not because you wake up grateful for premium access to something you forgot existed. Just because the little plastic rectangle keeps saying yes. And when researchers looked at 10 subscription services, the weird part showed up in the data. When people got replacement cards and had to update payment details, renewals dropped sharply, which means some customers had already emotionally left. The company just kept getting paid before the paperwork caught up. Okay, so the obvious answer is this is your fault. Read the terms, set a reminder, manage your accounts like a responsible adult, preferably with a spreadsheet, a calendar alert, and no human emotions. Right? Well, not quite, because companies are not designing for the person you become in a productivity fantasy. They are designing for the person you are on a Tuesday, tired, busy, and mildly ashamed. You stop wanting the service emotionally, but you have not exited administratively. And in this economy, that gap matters. Because if a company can predict the gap between intention and action, that is not just psychology. According to NBER Digest, this is not just one person forgetting a $9.99 charge. Researchers looked at transaction data from a large domestic payment card network, not a vibes-based study. Actual card payments. Very annoying for anyone hoping this was harmless. The data covered about 30% of subscribers, and the window ran from August 2017 to December 2021. So when old cards were replaced, some people suddenly had to update payment details, which is a tiny administrative task and apparently also a lie detector for subscription value. If they still loved the service, they would update the card. Well, not quite everyone did. The estimate was brutal. Inattention could raise revenue by 14% to more than 200%, compared with a world where people cancel the moment they stop valuing the service. So the forgotten charge is not background noise. For some firms, it is part of the engine. So the engine has a name: negative option billing. Very elegant phrase. Very cursed little machine. It means the seller can treat silence as acceptance. Not clicking opt out, acceptance. Not finishing cancellation, also acceptance. Not wanting the service anymore, legally adorable, but not enough. The transaction does not end when your brain says, I am done. It ends when the system says, cancellation complete. That gap is where the money lives. And because this got ridiculous early, the US already tried to fence it in. ROSCA, passed in 2010, said all mine sellers need clear terms, informed consent, and a simple way to stop. So, okay, the law is not sitting there thinking, surprise billing, how innovative. But if cancellation is supposed to be simple, why does the exit still feel like a haunted filing cabinet? Digital design is where negative auction billing gets industrialized. Because the maze is not just legal language anymore. It is buttons, menus, defaults, fine print, fees, ads, privacy toggles, and one tiny exit door. In 2022, the FTC grouped these tricks into categories like difficult cancellation and buried terms. Also junk fees, disguised ads, and data sharing tricks. You know, the normal little friendship bracelets of modern commerce. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is that online companies can test the maze. They can collect data, compare layouts, and keep the version that preserves the most confused customers. And in 2024, a sweep of 642 subscription websites and apps found this was not exactly rare. Nearly 76% used at least one possible dark pattern. Nearly 67% used multiple possible dark patterns because apparently one trap was leaving money on the table. Once companies can measure the maze, the main character quietly changes. It is not really the forgetful subscriber anymore. It is the forecast. Because your unfinished cancellation is not just a tiny personal failure. In the right spreadsheet, it is retention. It is lower churn. It is higher lifetime value. Very normal phrases, by the way, for they kept paying after they wanted to stop. And make no mistake, this does not require a cartoon villain. If you are a subscription company rewarded for predictable revenue, a customer who almost leaves but does not finish leaving is extremely convenient. Their half-completed task becomes your stable line item. Customer success can mean helping the customer succeed, sure. But in this model, it can also mean the customer successfully fails to leave. The Amazon Prime case is where this stops being a vibe and becomes a case folder. According to the FTC, Many shoppers saw a nice, clear Prime offer, $14.99 a month. The no Prime option, meanwhile, could be harder to find or unclear, which is a very polite way of saying the exit from the upsell was wearing camouflage. But the really perfect detail was the cancellation flow's internal name. Amazon reportedly called it Iliad, as in Homer's Iliad, a 24-book, nearly 16,000-line epic. Apparently, canceling free shipping needed the emotional range of ancient warfare. And then, in 2025, the FTC settlement landed $2.5 billion. That included a $1 billion civil penalty and $1.5 billion in refunds for an estimated 35 million consumers. Internal documents reportedly called Prime driving a bit of a shady world, an unwanted subscription steering, and unspoken cancer. So no, this was not just one confused button having a bad day. And once you see the pattern, Amazon stops looking like the weird one. Adobe is the contract version. The FTC and DOJ alleged users were pushed toward an annual paid monthly plan, which is a wonderful phrase, because it sounds monthly until you try to leave annually. The alleged early termination fee was 50% of the remaining first-year payments. That is not a cancel button. That is a small financial ankle bracelet, and this is not attached to some tiny hobby app with 3 users and a dream. Reuters reported Adobe subscription revenue hit $4.92 billion in the quarter ending March 1, 2024. That was 95% of total revenue. So, yes, recurring revenue matters. Tiny accounting observation there. Then, Uber One shows the screen maze version. The FTC alleged some users could face up to 23 screens and 32 actions to cancel. Reasons: pause offers, retention offers, the exit starts collecting side quests. And SiriusXM shows the human version, where cancellation becomes a conversation you did not ask for. New York investigators said agents used a 6-part conversation and up to 5 retention offers. One chat allegedly lasted 40 minutes despite repeated cancellation requests. So the same incentive can be a fee, a maze, or a very polite hostage negotiation. The obvious fix is almost insultingly simple. Make cancellation as easy as sign up. Not easier, not magical, just equally easy. That was the point of the FTC's 2024 click-to-cancel rule. If you can join with a few clicks, you should be able to leave with a few clicks. Radical concept. Very dangerous, possibly civilization ending. And for a moment, that looked like the clean answer to the maze. But here comes the bad news. In 2025, the 8th Circuit vacated the rule. Not because the idea of easy cancellation was suddenly absurd. The court knocked it out on procedural grounds, which is the most legal way possible to say. The exit button must wait in line. Then, in March 2026, the FTC restarted the rulemaking process. Meanwhile, complaints kept rising, about 42 a day in 2021, nearly 70 a day in 2024. So the problem was not disappearing. It was filing paperwork faster than the fix. So this is the loop. Make sign-up instant, make leaving slower, and let auto-renewal sit quietly in the middle. The customer may be done emotionally, but economically, wrong. They are done when the system says the exit is complete. And that gap is not treated as an accident. It becomes retention. It becomes predictable recurring revenue, which is corporate poetry for money that keeps arriving. Now obviously, nobody has to sit in a basement stroking a villain cat for this to work. One team can say it is improving conversion. Another can say it is reducing churn. Another can say it is preserving revenue. Customer success can say it is giving users more chances to reconsider, which sounds lovely. In the same way, a maze is just an exciting hallway with confidence issues. The result is a system that does not need you to love the product forever. It only needs you to leave later than you meant to. So that forgotten charge on your card was not just a tiny mistake, it was a tiny unit of a much larger business model. Not because you are uniquely careless. Bad news, you are extremely normal. And normal, distracted people are very forecastable. The wider economy is learning this trick everywhere: access, renewals, accounts, defaults. You stop actively wanting something, but the relationship keeps spilling politely in the background. Pretty grim stuff. Very clean revenue line. The practical answer is not inspirational, but it is useful. It explains why the front door is bright and the exit is hiding in a submenu.